What's up, everyone? I am Tensteps. Welcome to my YouTube channel. Thank you guys so much for tuning into this video. Today, I wanted to give you guys kind of an exclusive look on a studio walkthrough of my track, Ecstasy. I'm not going to go super in depth because I don't want this video to be really long. I'm just going to kind of pick out the main things here, and then if you guys have questions or anything that you want to know in particular about what I did in the project, post it down in the comments below, and I can always do another video, more detailed on specific things. So you guys, I'm hoping at this point have heard the track. It's called Ecstasy. It's out now on Harmony Music, Andrew Rael's label. He's been playing it in his sets for quite a while, so a lot of people heard it before they realized that it was me, which is really cool because I've seen a lot of chatter online about, who is this? What track is it? When is it coming out? And now it's finally out. So, with that being said, let's kind of jump in here. The intro here is not really anything too complicated. In fact, the track itself, there's nothing really too complicated going on. This is actually one of my most straightforward tracks that I've ever made. I mean, if you look at it just, from as an overview, right? You have your break here with the plucks, then your big synths come in, then you return to the plucks, and then your big synths come back in. And that's really all it is. It's not a whole lot going on here. In fact, you can even see it when you're looking at the project numbers as well, the track numbers as well. Most of my tracks are, usually in the 130 to 150, individual track range. This is only 79, so there's definitely not as much going on here as a lot of my other projects. But let's dive in here. I'm going to play just a bit of the intro. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the intro, just because there's, again, really not a whole lot going on. So I'm just going to play a little bit of it. Pretty simple. There's a top bass. All that is just a Spire preset that I've modified a little bit. I think I use Spire for the vast majority of this. And then this is basically just a sub bass basically there. And then your main plucked bass, which is again just a Spire trance bass preset that I've modified a little bit. And then under that there's an acid, which is what really gives it its uniqueness. And even just a quick little note change like that gives it a lot of attitude. So for example, if I bring this up and play it, bring that up too. So this is all just one note for these 4 bars, right? It would be a lot more boring. Whereas here, it just kind of gives it a little bit of something extra, a little bit of attitude, a little bit of just something to keep it not so monotone. Because if you were to have, this entire space here just be one note the whole way through, it'd get really boring really fast. All right, so let's jump into the verse now. I'm going to zoom in here on this because this is what makes up the bulk of the verse, the break, whatever you want to call it. I come from, songwriting and playing in bands, and, a breakdown when I was playing in bands was, I used to be in metal bands. So that was a completely different meaning than what a break is in trance music. So I just kind of got used to, a verse, hook, drop kind of terminology. So I don't always like using the word break, but it's basically the same thing. So all these plucks are doing is teasing the main melody that comes in later. So as I go through this, there's a little bit of processing on the stack here. Just some EQing, taking out some resonant frequencies. And then if you go into the individual tracks, everything is low cut. You'll find that I low cut virtually everything. In fact, my default preset, if I load up an EQ, I have my Pro Q3 set to a low cut at 25 hertz and a high cut at 20K. Just for me, I don't want anything below 25 ever and nothing above 20,000. Take that off. And then there's a filter here. You'll see there's some automation going on here. Spire is being automated quite a bit with the filter cutoffs and envelopes and things like that. And then also a filter, I believe, comes in here, which is just basically a high-pass filter. And then from there, we can basically go on to the next track. Actually, here, I'll solo this for you. So that's the first one. And the second one. So this actually has gain automation, right? Which is why you can barely hear it right now. And then it comes in much stronger later. So if we listen to that. And you can see there's some other automation going on here too. Releases, the release increases here. So this is linked to Spire. So there's actually a bunch of things being automated. There's this cutoff, which is basically almost like a macro for this. Then this is being automated as well, and then the release here on envelope 1, which controls the release of both of oscillators 1 and 2, because those are the only ones being used. And then, by the way, if you're curious on why I keep getting out of the automation window before I hit anything, it's because I have my automation set so that if I click on something, it'll snap there, so you'll lose sight of whatever you're seeing there. So for example, like if I open up Spire and I hit width, it's actually going to change to the width, automation control. But it doesn't do that if you're not in the automation window. I can hit solo as many times as I want, and now if I open it up, it's still not going to be on solo. That's why I do that. It's just a force of habit. It makes doing my automation a lot easier. Anyway, so that's my plucks. And then there's some gain automation over the entire stack. And there's also a filter knob. This is the DJM filter. It's a free plugin from Xfer, the same people that make Serum. It's not officially supported anymore, but if it still works on your computer, go for it. I just really like that plugin because it reminds me, like I'm a DJ, and it just reminds me of the filters on the Pioneer mixers. So that's pretty much the plucks. Now, there is one other thing here. Well, there's also another, there's a counter lead as well. And that's just being filtered up there. And then, of course, we have our vocal chops, which are super important. So these were actually pre-made. I don't remember for the life of me what pack they're from, but they I didn't make them. I just found them probably somewhere on Splice. And then this one, I believe I just pitch shifted. Yeah, so that was actually an octave up. That actually sounds like this. But I decided I didn't like that. It needed some some differentiating factors, right? It needed to go from a high octave down to a low octave. So I came up with this. And I thought that sounded cool. So when you play it all together, you get this. And then, of course, you have your strings and everything that come in here, too. There's not a lot of elements that you can't hear, is the thing. This track is very transparent. And I think that's part of why it's so not complicated, because everything stands out so much on its own that you don't really need a lot of, like, little background things. Everything just kind of stands on its own. So you have these strings here. And these just kind of build and swell. So you see how the chord gets bigger and bigger and bigger as it goes. It just starts with one note, then two, then the high note goes up, then it becomes three notes. The three notes get even bigger, then it becomes more and more. And then, of course, the volume automation goes up as well, and I believe that was the only automation used. So that's a good way to create, you can create tension. So rather than just stacking a bunch of white noise or a bunch of risers, you can actually use your instruments to create tension. I do the same thing with pads a lot in my uplifting tracks. I will have the filter cutoffs really low, and then I'll automate them to kind of come up, same way this automation does, to kind of create a climax, so to speak. So let's hop out of the strings and let's see if there is anything else. I don't think so. I mean, there's just the usual drums. There's a tambourine loop, the normal stuff up here. It's just a shaker loop, a clap, and a ride. Again, not a whole lot of crazy stuff going on here. And then I guess we could talk about the atmospheres as well. Atmospheres are really important for me because they are not very noticeable. They are one of the background things. But if I took them out, you would notice that there's a lot of space that's not being filled. So they sound like this. And you'll see in this case, I didn't really do all that much processing to them. In fact, none on these, and then just a gain automation on these. Normally I would EQ those, but in this case, these were actually EQ'd pretty tight. And I just used the reverb that was built into the sample. Nowadays, because don't forget, this track was made a long time ago at this point. This was made, I don't know, maybe early or mid 2019. At least started early 2019. I think I probably finished it sometime around August or so. Maybe September. So I've kind of updated how I do some things since then. Now I take my atmospheres and I put them on a totally separate stack. I don't bust them with the effects. I put a bunch of reverb on them. I EQ them super heavily, but in this case, the track just didn't need it. So let's jump into the main chords. So when I made this had to be epic. And I'm pretty sure this is actually where I started with the track. I'm pretty sure this is the main melody that I had. So you'll see that we go from, 3 layers of plucks, a counter lead and some strings, to suddenly 2 plucks, 8 layers of leads, and then the basses, plus all the effects. So it's becomes a lot bigger really, really fast, which is important because if you overload your breaks and your builds and everything, then your drops and your big payoffs just aren't as big. They don't pay off as much. You need to create a contrast between these two sections. So that's really important. As far as the synths go, let's take a quick listen to just them. So you'll notice that it's basically the same melody as what the verse plucks were doing. The difference is obviously that they are way bigger here. So let's go down the list. I didn't do much processing to these. It's really just EQ, and then I basically did all my compression, saturation, anything like that. I did that all on the stack. So if we take a listen to each drop layer or each chord layer. So that's probably the one that you're hearing most. The one that you're hearing second most is actually just a high lead. So it's actually not the whole chord, it's just the top note. So when I combine these two, right now I could almost just leave it like that. But of course I have to be difficult about it. So we have a lot more layers that are doing a lot of other jobs. This one's pretty simple. It's basically pretty thin. It's just meant to add some top end. That's got a lot of mids going on, and then also a little bit of top end as well. That's got a really nice attack to it, so it helps just kind of punch through a little bit. Same thing there. It's mostly about the attack. That one's really just nice and warm. And that just kind of gave it a cool tone. It has some attack to it. Also has a lot of warmth, a lot of body. A lot of these are kind of top heavy, so this definitely helps smooth it out a little bit. And then as far as the actual mix on the stack, I'll show you what I did. I basically ran it through the glue. Let me solo this out. So this is a glue compressor. Does a pretty decent amount of compression there. And then I EQ'd it, added some air at the top, up here in like the 8,000 to 9,000 range. And then just ducked out some of the mids as well here. Sometimes things can get a bit muddy in this area, like 300, 400. Sometimes things can definitely kind of build up there, and you end up eating up a lot of headroom. And also you get these weird resonant frequencies that are really ugly. So I just kind of tried to knock some of that out without being too aggressive about it. And then from there, we went into the OTT, which is just at a depth of 12%. Not really doing a whole lot, but if I turn it on and off, I think you'll hear the difference. Let me kill these. Right, just by turning it on with all the knobs at default, all of the sliders at default, everything, time at 100%, which is default, in and out, both at 0, everything is default. Upward and downward, 100%, everything is at their default init preset setting. The only thing that I changed here is just turning the depth from from 0 up to 12, and the difference is amazing. Just listen to the attack and the brightness. Here's without it. Put it this way, there's a reason why so many producers use OTT on their leads and their basses and other things. It's because it really, really can do some amazing stuff, even with minimal tweaking. From there, I went into a multi-band compressor. Now, if I'm being totally honest here, I didn't do this myself. This was a preset, the expanded side dynamics inside the FabFilter Pro MB. I just kind of cycled through presets till I found something I liked, and this did it. And then we went into another EQ where, again, just gave it a little bit of air, just not as, a little bit of presence, not air. Air is usually up here in like the 8,000 plus range, so maybe it's 10,000 plus range. And then here, this is more presence. So actually, if I turn this on, so that's just the area that's been raised. And if I take it out, if you listen really carefully, you can kind of hear it just become a little bit more present. It cuts through the mix a little bit more. And then again, just the DJM filter for some automation, and then the LFO tool, which is automated to turn on in the drop. From there, I have 2 pluck layers. So with the delay, this is basically just filling out the space in between each hit. So like all this little space in here, the delay is filling out. The plucks also add to the attack. Both the plucks and the leads are sent to their own reverb and delay buses. I've talked about this in previous videos, I believe. So I send those out. Leads, the main synths go there. It's buses 20 and 21, and then the plucks go to 22 and 26. Each of them is reverb and delay respectively. And then from there we have our bass, of course. Which of course just goes along with the chords. A little exhaust here right at the beginning. Really important when you like slam into something like that, to have something at the beginning that can really just, bang hard. In this case, it was this impact here. And then when you combine it with the 2 exhausts and the down sweep, you get a really nice effect. Now, there's a lot of impacts on the market that have like an exhaust or a down sweep built into it. Don't feel like because it's already there, you don't need to do anything else. Always, expect that you may have to build on top of whatever presets or samples you're getting, because they're not always designed for exactly what you're using them for. Every track is different, and most times preset makers and sample makers tend to put less because it gives you more freedom to add more. Whereas if they have a bunch of sweeps and everything, already on it, a bunch of processing already on it, it makes it harder for you to modify it for what you need. So now we can just jump right into the build. We'll talk about this very quickly. This video is getting kind of long already, but there's not a lot going on here. It's only stuff that we've seen before. It's just a pluck melody repeated. Right? With some automation that I believe will have it come up. There we go. So it gets filtered down here with the DJM filter, and then it hits about neutral right in the middle, and then it gets filtered up the rest of the way. Same thing here, and then this is just a release automation on Spire. Again, nothing we haven't seen. The counter lead is still here. The strings are still there. The only thing that comes in that we haven't seen before is just this low pad. And really, the reason that that's there is because we had all this bass in the part before it. So if the bass suddenly dropped out now, it would feel kind of weird. And then that pad will actually be filtered and gained down. So as it gets closer to the drop, the volume drops and the filter goes up. So you get less and less and less bass until you can barely hear it at all. And then the drop hits nice and hard. So let's move over to the drop, right? The main part of the song. Now, if you'll notice, this is almost a carbon copy of everything that was over here, right? Nothing was added except for this pluck bass, and the acid came back. So the pluck bass from the intro and the acid from the intro are both now here in the drop. So we have this just to kind of help it move forward a little bit, right? Because without them, sounds like this. Right, it just kind of helps it roll a little bit, which is really, really important. This isn't a particularly fast song. Like if I had done this at like 134, 136, 138, it would have had a little bit more of a rolling quality on its own. But this needed something, to kind of get it rolling and give it some tempo. Of course, 130 BPM is definitely considered tempo, but it needed a little something extra just to have each note or each beat kind of roll into the next one. So these kind of accomplish that well, these doubles and then the acids as well. So moving on up to percussion, we have obviously our kick here. I'm just going to kind of solo things as we go, and I'll take you through each progression to see how it kind of builds on top of each other. So we start with just the kick and the ride. And then, of course, we have in the fill, we have a big snare. We have an open hi-hat and a snare. And then from there, we add in our 2 top loops, 1 and 2. We also have our fill in there as well. And then when you add the effects on top of that, you have your white noise going, you have your exhausts. And now watch this upsweep kind of build some more energy. So it's all about how you use a combination of percussion and effects to build tension, release it, create energy, take it away, right? And then it goes back into the outro, and that's pretty much it as far as this track goes. So I hope the video wasn't too long. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you have questions, I know I just kind of went like a brief overview on this, but if you have specific questions on anything that I did in this track or any other, drop a comment below, or hit me on my Instagram or hit me on my Twitter, whatever is easier for you, and I will try and make more videos on more specific things. I meant to kind of make more videos on stuff like this during this quarantine, but I actually have been pretty caught up on making music. I have a lot of new tracks that I've been finishing up, and I'm really, really excited about them. Some of them are going to come later this year. Some are going to be in 2021. So my release schedule is quite full now, but I have a lot of awesome stuff that I think you guys are going to really like, because I know I do. So with that being said, my name is Tensteps. Thank you guys so much for watching. Peace.